Hi, it's Tim. Welcome to the channel. Today we have got an Amiga 1200 on the bench. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it works. I don't know what its history is. I know it's got a Gotek, so it's obviously been used more recently than 1990. Let's take a look. It's a bit yellowed, it's a little bit scruffy in places, the key's a bit yellowed. The case looks to be in good condition. All the screws are in, the seal is broken. That is obvious by the fact that it's got a Gotek in it. Right, so looking at the back, the ports look quite neat and tidy. There's no obvious signs of rusting there. None of the screws seem to be missing. MCIA slot is there. Made in the Philippines. Let's have a quick look inside it before we power it on. Okay, well there is some rust on the board. That's interesting. That's not going to work because that's not really actually connected. Push that to one side. Ah, okay, it's got a hard drive, IBM. Is that the original hard drive, I wonder? 3D printed case for the Gotek. There's nothing in here, which is a shame because it's nice when you get little surprises. Okay, remember green is that side. Okay, it's polarized anyway. Right, that's the power supply to the Gotek. That is not actually attached. This appears to be attached only here. That's a Gotek. We could probably put that in the 1581. Just a thought, it's got an Amiga connector, so it would plug straight in. D81 files. This just lifts off. We can unplug that from there. Capacity 344 megabytes. I wonder if it works. So there's this screw here. That's all that's holding the board in. The case looks a little bit grubby on the inside, but I don't think it's too bad. So underneath the shielding it looks quite clean, but look at that. It looks very, very grim and grotty. I'll take a photograph so that... There we go. If we can't see it on the video, hopefully we'll see it on that. But that looks horrible. Now these look like factory mods. I'm not quite sure what they are. This is a Rev 1B. Now my other A1200 is a Rev 1A, so this is at least slightly later. Oh dear, look at that. That video connector is melted. Somebody's been in there with a soldering iron. And that capacitor has got a chunk out of it. Yeah, you can see that goes down to bare metal, so that looks like that's been melted. So someone's been in here before. Is that a heat gun? It looks like it might be general melting. So the audio connectors look to be okay. That looks a little bit crusty around there. The caps are not bulging. ROMs are v3.0. Okay. Hard drive is back in. Gotek is back in and actually plugged in this time. I've got a USB stick of random Amiga stuff on there. I'm not quite sure what's on that USB drive. Mouse, video connector, and I'm using my Meanwell Magic Golden Ultra Needs Retrobrighting colour power supply. Right, powering it on. 3, 2, 1. Power light, screen grows grey, that's a good sign. And straight into Workbench CLI. Release 1.3.3. That must be what's on this thing. It's obviously booting something. So I think that's booted off the Gotek. Oh yeah, Workbench 133. I am going to take this out and see if it boots the hard drive. Right, 3, 2, 1. Possible hard drive boot. And the answer to that is no. These are some of the boards from PCBWay that have featured on the channel. These are boards that I designed and laid out myself. PCBWay's bespoke PCB service lets you just upload the Gerber files and they will produce a PCB like these in 1 to 3 days, starting at just $5 for 10 boards. But PCBWay don't only do PCBs. They also do 3D printing, they do CNC machining, they do sheet metal work. If you've got a project that's either 1 board, 5 boards, 10 boards, or 100 boards, 1,000 boards, check them out. www.pcbway.com. We thank them for sponsoring this video. So while we're waiting for the capacitors to arrive, let's start cleaning up the casework. Now I'm going to retrobright this. I'm going to try a new technique which is called VapourBrighting. But as with all retrobrighting, you need to start with the case in a clean condition. So, paper towel, window cleaner, because that's good stuff for plastic, scrubbing brush, keycap puller. Let's get on with it. Cue the music. Okay, that's the case done. Now we need to do the keys. That, of course, will go into some washing up liquid downstairs. So I've got a box to put the keys in. I wonder if you can guess where it came from. Right. Okay, so all the keys are off The main keyboard obviously is filthy and needs cleaning. The keys themselves need cleaning. I'm going to clean those individually and then they will go in the sink with the dishwater. You don't need to see that. We will come back when we start doing the retrobrighting. See you in a bit. Okay, so this is the setup I'm going to try. I've got a tank here that will contain the peroxide. These are my keys and these are my bits. None of them are actually going to be immersed in anything, and it's going to rely on vapour coming off this. It's got the heater in there that goes on the top. The grow light goes on the top there, and hopefully that is going to work. I'm doing it outside because if this is vapour, then peroxide vapour is not very nice stuff. And this is going to be probably in several stages because we've got storms coming through, so yay! So here it is running. Mains wires are all undercover, so it should be set protected to some extent, and I'm going to put a cover over this as well. Okay, so I've got the cap kit and we can crack on with replacing the capacitors. Comes with a little diagram of where things go. Well, not really a diagram, just a list. So first things first, let's get the tin case off. And to do that, we're going to need to undo all these nuts at the back. So let's find the right size hex driver. And just spin those nuts. I'm keeping an eye on the weather outside because the case is retrobrighting and there are supposed to be storms today. And because it's a vapor retrobright and I'm doing it for the first time, I'm doing it outside just so the kitchen does not fill with fumes. And there we are. That looks quite clean actually. A few spots of rust. That is the plastic insert to insulate it. No immediate looking problems on the bottom. This is the worst area, of course. Now I think my plans for this machine include fitting a Pi Storm. So I believe that comes with the possibility of an HDMI output. In any case, we don't need the modulator. And some of these caps we wouldn't need to replace because they only serve the modulator. But to be honest, we might as well just replace them all in any case. Let's take out the 4 through-hole capacitors. Trusty solder sucker. Start with this one. There we go. So that's the through-hole caps off. Right, so these ones, it's the good old technique. There we go, all off. I can immediately see, there we go, around here I can immediately see that That looks very gooey and gungy and yuck. So these capacitors were definitely starting to leak. So let's clean up the board in the traditional manner, and then we can start putting new capacitors on. Actually, what we want to do is clean these pad remains off. So we're going to use some fresh solder. The iron is back down to 350. There we go. You might be able to see the remains of the legs are actually coming off onto the solder wick. You are lucky this is not smelly camera. Okay, so now it's a matter of putting the new capacitors on. So we're going to do them in sort of reverse order. So these are 100 microfarads, 16 volts. These are 22, and it says quantity 5, but we've only got 4. So I'm going to have to see if I've got another one, some of those. 47, quantity 2, 10, quantity 3, we've got an extra one of those. And these are the through holes, which we will do at the end. Right, so we're going to start with the smallest. So these go, the flat bit is negative, so on the flat end is negative, and you might hopefully see on here there is actually a bend on that side. Right. Oops. But that is on. Okay, that's the surface mount capacitors done. In the absence of one of the 22 microfarads, I've just tacked a through hole one onto the top there. But all these others are in. I slightly melted that, but soldered down, so there we go. I'm going to clean the board up a little bit and then put on the through hole ones. Okay, we've got two values. We've got 1000 microfarads, 10 volts, and we've got 470 microfarads, 16 volts. So these ones go into C237 and C307. So that's one of them. Check the right way around. And C307 is this one here. So that's one, because this is a massive ground plane again. There we go. And the last two. There we go, and clean up the board. Right, let's clean up the desk and then we can give it a try. Okay, I've plugged the Amiga back in. I haven't attached the keyboard at this point. The keyboard is here, it's clean. It could go in, but the issue is that without the springs on here, all the keys are basically pressed effectively, and so it's really not going to work. The clip that goes here was not present when I pulled the keys, so I don't know if I can find another clip for that. It'll probably be okay for now without, because it was without before, but whoever took this keyboard apart last lost that clip. So let's power it up. The lights come on. It's going to take a while because there's no hard drive plugged in. I need to look at this because it seems not to have been working. Right. Kickstart screen, or rather Workbench screen. Now what have we got on here? Amiga test kit. Ah, jolly good. Right, so the mouse works. I'm not going to go all the way through that. It does seem to be okay. I don't have the sound plugged in, so it's not going to do anything. Don't need to do that because we've got a Gotek in there. So far so good. So the Retrobrighting is back from downstairs. Here we go. That's a very unretrobrighted mouse, just for comparison. It does look lighter. I'm going to have to compare it against the earlier pictures to see exactly how well it's done. The keys still look a bit yellowed. And when you compare the tops against the underneaths. But we shall see. Let's start putting it back together. So we're going to start with the base. And in fact, before that, we are going to start with the PCB. Just unplug the bits. And this is going to go back into its metal case. Metal tray, plastic thing. Unplug the mouse. This goes back into here. And then we can screw the nuts back in. Okay, so now it can go into the bottom tray. One screw to hold it down, that's pretty much it. And then the keyboard goes on the top. And that pushes down. There we go, so that goes on there like that. There probably should be 2 screws, but there was only 1. Because both of those are threaded. Nevertheless, that goes on there like that. We should really put these on before you don't want to watch me putting all these on, so we'll come back when they're done. There we are, it's all back together. I'm not going to screw it down for a while, just so that we can try it out. So how does that look? I think those keys still look a bit yellow. That actually doesn't look too bad now. It's a bit yellow down the side still. You can't really see with the camera in that position. If I turn it around, does that still look a bit yellow to you? Right, let's plug it in and see if it actually still goes. Right, power going on. 3, 2, 1. Power light comes on. I didn't see the floppy disk light come on there. Hopefully you can hear that. Definitely working. Let's check the keyboard. Okay, they're sticking down a bit because this top cover is not fitted properly. I'm using this partly to check that I've actually put the keys on the right caps. Good. Now let's see if we can get this hard drive to go. 344 megabytes, 915 heads. Okay, so this simply plugs in. Although, let's move the keyboard out of the way. Just these are not polarized, so it's just a matter of having them the right way around, but the stripe is normally pin 1, so just to swap it around. And then that can go in here. And that's how it sits. Now, with nothing plugged into the Gotek, in theory the hard drive should boot. Oh, I saw a flicker. Maybe it's just not formatted. So let's treat this as an unformatted disk and basically set it up as a new machine and install Workbench on it. It's still got 3.0 ROMs in there, but that's fine. Now on this USB I have got Workbench 3.1 and Workbench 3.2. We're going to try and put Workbench 3.1 onto this machine, at least onto the hard drive. It's got 3.0 ROMs in it, but that can take either Workbench 3.0 or Workbench 3.1. So we should be good with 3.1. Let's put the disk in. I call it a disk. It's a USB card. Right. Floppy disk light is going. That's a good sign. I don't entirely know what I'm doing, so this will be fun. The best way to do this would be with a floppy drive and real floppies, but I don't have them at the moment. Right, 3.1 install. I think we have to run HD setup. Or do we run HD tools? No, I think it's HD setup English. Let's see what it does anyway. Let's try naught. It's accessing it. The nice thing about installing to a real hard drive as opposed to an SD card or a compact flash card is you can hear the drive rattling. That brings back memories. Remove the disk, press proceed. This hopefully should boot from the hard drive. Huh. It didn't. Let's power it down. It doesn't see the hard drive. That's interesting. Let's go to the install disk. Let's see if we can do a format. So it's recognized the drive. It's zero bootable. Maybe that was the problem. Right, I think we're getting somewhere. Take 359. So I finally got Workbench partition and a work partition that are the same size, 163 megabytes. And the way I had to do this was to copy the HD tools folder from the install disk into the RAM disk, boot from Workbench 3.1. I had to run the HD toolbox to create the partitions and then format it from within. Oh, I haven't got the disk in. Format it from within Workbench 3.1 disk, which didn't see the icons, but the format command came up with a window and listed DH0 and DH1, so I could format them. This is really round the houses. Anyhow, that has now formatted it so I can boot from my install disk, install 3.1, and hopefully this will let me run the install on a fully 163 megabyte hard disk partition. So, control Amiga. Fingers crossed. And they've disappeared again. You saw them, they were there. Yet again, the drives are not showing. I bet if I loaded the Workbench partition, there we go. It's one thing I really hate about Gotex. Gone. So finally, I've got this installed. Clock, of course, showing completely the wrong time because there's no battery backed up real-time clock in here. What I had to do, and this was a bit of a saga, what I had to do eventually was boot this from the Workbench disk, and unfortunately I didn't actually film it. I filmed about 15 other attempts beforehand, but the one that worked didn't. And sadly, I wanted to get the original hard drive working, but I couldn't get it to survive a boot. And the only times that it would actually install, it only wanted to have an 800K partition. And, well, that would barely get Workbench on it. In fact, it would barely just get the Workbench boot disk on it. So that was, sadly. What we discovered is that HD Setup only has fixed size partitions, and the sizes that they have got are absolutely useless. So you have to partition, and I did this with the SD card in here. It's a 4GB SD card, and it's partitioned into two. So we've got Work, which is a 2GB partition, and Workbench, which is a 2GB partition. Arguably much too big for Workbench, but I wanted to just do an even split. So in order to set up the disk, you can't use HD Setup, you have to use HD Toolbox, and that will determine the specs of the drive and also partition it, but it won't format it. And HD Toolbox comes on the install floppy, but there is no format command on the install floppy. The only way you can format it is through HD Setup, and HD Setup has fixed size partitions that totally ignores what you specified in HD Toolbox. So what you've got to do is boot from the Workbench disk, copy HD Toolbox from the install disk into RAM, run the HD Toolbox to partition the drive, then format it using system format, and you can see it lists the drives in there, and then, and only then, can you boot from the install disk and actually run the installer. So it is a right faff. I'm reasonably convinced that whoever set up and created these install disks never actually tried to use them, because they would know it's a right faff. Anyhow, it is now working, so I can do stuff. I haven't installed anything particularly on here at the moment, because sometime fairly soon I'm hoping to get a PyStorm, and that is going to blow away that compact flash drive, and it's going to, you know, completely change the way that we use this Amiga. But that's for the future. If you've got this far, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and do all those useful stuff. Check out my Patreon. There is interesting stuff on there for patrons only. You get advanced access to videos and ad-free access to videos. So my existing patrons are scrolling up the screen. Thank you to them. Thank you very much to them. And I will see you next time. See ya. Bye.